Okay, so we've added our title and our little intro text onto the page. Now we need to get on and add our form. So first we need to add in our form tag. And next we need to add in our method attribute. Now there are two different types of values we can use in here, either post or get. Now these attributes specify how the form data is sent to the server. So you would use the get attribute if you wanted to append the form data to the URL. So when the user hits the submit button, your URL will then turn into, say, name1, value1, name2, value2, for example. And that information would obviously be visible to the user. And this information can be bookmarked and stored in the cache of the browser. Therefore, it is important not to use this attribute if you are requesting or sending sensitive data over your form. The other method is post. Now this method is a lot more secure as all the information isn't cached. It cannot be bookmarked and it never displays the form information within the URL. So this is exactly what we want for our form, so we add the post to our method. Also in our form tag we could add an action. So this is where you want your user to go after they've submitted the form. So for example, a thankyou.php page is a common destination. However, as this form won't be going anywhere, I'll leave this out. But that is what you'd actually need to put in if you wanted to redirect the user to another page or destination on your page. But the final thing that we need to add into this tag is the role equals form. So this is basically for accessibility reasons and helps users that are specifically using screen readers. Then finally what we need to do is just close off our form. So now we can start to add the inputs into our form. So we add in our first div. And we need to give this a class of form-group. So this basically provides the generic spacing around the form input so the items aren't just stacked closely on top of each other. So this is basically a predefined class within Bootstrap that displays the form in a nice way. Then we simply close off the div. Now in this div we need to add our first input, which on our form is the user's name. So we add in our input tag. Then we have the type. So as this is a name, we can simply add the type of text. Now there are a large number of different types you can have in here, which basically lets the form know what to expect as a result. For example, date or email or password. It's important to choose the correct one for the particular field, especially for mobile devices, as this will dictate which keyboard is displayed to the user. But as this is a name field, we can simply use the type of text. Next we need to add in the name attribute. So this is the reference that we use after the form has been submitted. So as this is our name field, we can simply give this an input name of name. Then we add in our input class, which is form-control. Again, this is used to control the sizing of the input. Then finally we have our placeholder, which basically lets the user know or gives the user an idea of what to input. So for this we simply add the your name text and then we can close off the tag. So if we just save that and overwrite the file, then go on to refresh our page, we can see that our name field has been added with the name placeholder within the input section. Now we need to go and add our other fields. So if we look at our finished page, we can see that next we have the email. So we can actually copy the div with the name field that we just created and paste that under, but making sure that we stay within our form tags. Then all we need to do is change the type to email, the name to email, and the placeholder to read your email. Now next we have our section for our actual message of the contact form. So this will be the content. So what we can actually do is copy our email div and paste that again underneath. Now for this we don't actually use the input tag, so we can remove the whole input tag that we've just pasted in. Now what we need to do is add in another HTML tag, which is text area. Then we add in our name attribute, and we can call this message. Now the default amount of rows that are displayed in the text area is set to 2. However, you can actually determine how many rows you'd like by simply adding the rows attribute and stating how many rows you'd like, simply with a value. So for our form, let's declare 5 rows. However, obviously feel free to play around with this number. It depends basically how much space you want to take up within the form. Then next we need to add in the form control class as we did with the previous fields. And finally we just need to add in our placeholder, which we can simply call message, and then we'll add in a few dots. And then we can close off the text area tag. So if we just save that off to check our progress, just overwrite the file, then just refresh our page, we can see that our email field and our message field have been added to the form. Now next we have our checkbox option. So this is basically there to prevent any spam bots filling in the form and then sending you lots of unwanted messages to your inbox. So for this what we can do is add in our div again. But this time we need to give it a class of checkbox. And then we can close the div off. Then we need to add in a label tag. And again close that off. Now within this tag we need to add in our checkbox. So this is again a form of input. So we add in the input tag. Then we add in our type, and this one is a checkbox. Then we can give this a name of check. So that adds in our actual checkbox, but we need to add some instructions for the user. So we can simply add in some text, obviously add in whatever you want here, but I'll just add in I am human. So if we just save off our file and then again overwrite and refresh our page, we can see that our checkbox has been added to the form, so all that's left now is to add our submit button. So back into our index file, we can simply add the button input directly into our form div. So we can add in the input tag, then we'll give this a type of submit as this is a button. Then we add in the name, which we can call submit as well. Now next we can add in our class. Now these will be the default Bootstrap classes for the buttons, which is btn. Then we add in our style, which is btn-secondary. So that's the default button in Bootstrap 4. In Bootstrap 3 you could use btn-default, which is the same button but it's been changed to secondary in Bootstrap 4. Then finally we add in our value. So this is basically the placeholder for the button. So what the button actually states. So we can put in here send message. Then when that's done we can simply save that off. Then if we overwrite our file again, then refresh our page, we can see that our button has been added to our page nicely and that the default stylings have been added. Now in our final form we can actually see that the button is placed within the center of the page. So to do this, if we head back to our index file, we can simply wrap the button in a div, and then we just simply add in the align class and we'll give that a value of center. Then obviously just close off the div. Then if we save that off again, and then refresh our page, we can see that the button has moved to the center of the form or the set of columns. So you could remove those if you wanted the button to the left hand side, or you could align it to the right hand side if you wanted to move it over to the other side of the form. But I'll leave it central as that's what our final form actually looks like. So you can actually see that all the elements are in place for our form. Now obviously it doesn't look too appealing at the minute. We'll be adding in the styles later to make it more visually appealing for the user. Now you'll also notice that the form doesn't actually do anything, especially if we hit our send message button, which is obviously no use. So next what we'll do is we'll move on to adding our PHPs to make our form act like an actual contact form, and we'll do that within our next lecture.